to the 40K Fireside podcast, where we discuss everything to do with competitive Warhammer 40K with your hosts Vic VJ and David Gaylord. Hello everyone, welcome back to 40K Fireside. This is Vic and Dave here today with you to do another tier list. Everyone loves a tier list, and this is the first bit of content that we're doing together on Thousand Sons.
Man.
Yeah, Thousand Sons is an army that we both really play. We love. We've taken to loads of tournaments. We've both been to LVO with it. We've both been to WTC with it. So this is massive, and we want to really share loads of knowledge on this faction with all of you guys. So this tier list is going to consolidate a lot of our thoughts on the kind of the army as a whole, but there's a lot more. Go for it.
We both went to Leicester and Nottingham with it as well.
Oh, did we? Yeah, it's pretty mad.
This is like the synthesis of our dynamic duo, really, in so many ways.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we've had a lot of discussion on our Discord about Thousand Sons. I've seen a lot of discussion generally on the internet. People are trying to work out where things are going. We've both put our lists on our Discord, and we've got feedback from our members. So if you guys do want to see more of that, you can join membership. Phoenix Lord level lets you get access to the Discord, and we will be doing more content on the members side for about Thousand Sons as well. But Dave has been working on the most exciting bit, so I'll pass it over to you for this.
Yeah, of course. We launched 40kfireside.com a little while back, a couple of weeks back when I got back from New York, and the very first Codex I was going to hit up for the master class was the Thousand Sons one. So it's called the Infernal Master class, which is awesome. It's absolutely incredible. It's on a whole nother level in terms of like production value. I've had Alexander Sacco come on, who's the current WTC champion, played Thousand Sons last year, of course. He's like 500 games in Thousand Sons. I had Lewis Smith from our team as well, who's a longtime Thousand Sons player, myself. We go through every detachment. It's 5.5 hours long. You can learn from the best players in the world for such an easy price to get into it. I mean, it's incredible. So anyway, if you like Thousand Sons, you're getting into it. Has a list for a tournament ready list for every detachment with TTS examples on how to get in and out, kind of play patterns and stuff like that for the early games there. So yeah, 40kfireside.com. Awesome. So let's get straight into it, because I've been practicing a lot of Thousand Sons because I've been prepping for the masterclass, and I've kind of been talking to a bunch of people as well. So I've got a pretty well-grounded opinion on what I think is good here and what I don't think is good. But what about you, Vic? What's been your overall impression getting into the Codex, I guess you could say, from the highest level?
So I played a lot of games with T-Sons, Dave, because there's been 2 WTCs now for it. And there's definitely some changes between the previous Codex and the current Codex. So there was a little bit of a transition when I was reading the Codex, trying to piece together the level of output I can get from each unit, the combos that can be played, and how to actually put that all together on the table. So I found it a little challenging. I put it up against kind of just a few practice games against some of the stronger armies in the meta, and I really struggled to get to grips with how T-Sons are meant to manage these things. They seemed fragile, slow, not able to play the mission, all of these things. But now I've got a good amount of practice in now, and I've started to wrap my head around things that I enjoy with it. And at the moment, I feel pretty confident. I think this is a great army, and it's definitely an army I'll be taking to tournaments as well. So this tier list and us combining our information together is going to be really interesting for both of us and also for the listeners here.
Nice. Should we start it off then? Because we've got, I think, maybe the most controversial unit, probably of the whole tier list here, actually. Just kicking off straight up, Magnus first. I've talked to a lot of people and played Magnus, played without Magnus. I've seen games with and without him. I think that Magnus is he's actually gotten a little bit better in some regards, but the meta has obviously changed in some regards as well. So here's my opinion on Magnus. I think he's very good into a lot of armies which can kind of gatekeep Thousand Sons to a certain degree. He's a big bully. So for example, you're playing against melee combat pressure armies. You're playing against maybe knights or something like that. Armies that are going to be up in your face, stat check type armies. I think Magnus is very good there. And obviously an army that has say a lot of just flat damage too. Magnus is just crazy good. He's the best unit you could purchase. But I think there are some armies where Magnus is actually not that good. For example, I think about Ultramarines. I think about Guard. He's not incredible against. Death Guard, I think he is pretty solid against, but you have that's kind of in that mid range where I think he can lose a little bit of steam there, because obviously he's about 420 points, so you are trading that versus basically a Rhino and 2 Rubric squads with characters more or less. So I mean that's a little bit more expensive, but it's pretty much there as well. So Magnus, I think, is really good for me if you're playing at like the X and 1 bracket, the X and O bracket, but I don't know if he's going to be the optimal choice for the highest, most tuned singles list in the game for me. I don't know. What are your thoughts on Maggie Vic?
It's incredibly complex. I mean, just list building and trying to work out play patterns with T-Suns is a very complex thing. This is a high-skill army to play, I think, correctly. And Magnus or no Magnus is a really interesting discussion. I think my first point would be that I wouldn't consider Magnus valuable outside of the Coven detachment, the Grand Coven.
For sure.
I think if we're going to talk about Magnus, we're thinking about the Grand Coven detachment. And at that point, he actually does do, I think, a little bit more output probably than he did before.
Yep.
But he's traded a few things here. Magnus's strengths are in the output and also sorting out your Cabal rituals, your army rule here by giving you the extra cast and the 2 casts. So he makes the game much tidier for you, and the +2 move is extremely relevant as well. But his overall movement is a little bit less than it was before. So what I'd recommend, because I think Magnus's potential to be taken effectively competitively depends a lot on the terrain set that you're on.
Excellent.
And
Yep.
what I've noticed is the one measurement you need is to measure 22 inches, which is a 16-inch move on Magnus, and 6 inches on the Temporal Surge, and just see what positions that gets you to, and what angles that can allow you to see into. My personal finding is on UKTC, it's okay. He's able to get to the flank angles just about, but it's a little awkward having to go around certain parts of the terrain. So I'm not sure he's completely optimal there. But if you put him on WTC, there are 2 advantages. One is the movement pathways from safe places is actually quite good, but also from the tip of his wing, he can see into a lot of ruins as well in WTC.
Exactly. Yep.
So Magnus, I think, is going to be more effective in some formats compared to other formats. And I completely agree with you. Maybe he's going to be effective on the mid tables, and he's going to be effective in teams a little bit more, where you can pick your matchups where he may be more effective.
Yep.
My last point on Magnus before you give him the ranking is that I found something very interesting with his survivability, which to me feels a little lower than it was before. He chips away at a lot of his own wounds while he's casting his spells, and I found him ending up losing 3 to 5 wounds across a game just from casting spells, which puts him at a dangerous space where he actually just does kind of get picked apart by anything that can target him. And without the kind of free rerolls to your save and things like that, you're just banking on one blank that you have to try and keep him alive.
Yeah, and so I completely agree with everything you say. I think the WTC is the optimal format to play him on, and I think GW terrain is probably the worst format actually, because his model's so big that you can shoot from deployment zone to deployment zone so often. So I think that's the most shooting orientated format currently. So I think that's where he's worst. But a point that you were going to touch on is your CP management with this army is so much more strained than it previously was, and the best strats for him were, of course, 4 rerolls to hit and wound and extra range. But conditionally, you could use both of those on different strats. So now that that's interwoven into one core strat that starts at 2 CP, it's much more harder to get into that, because a lot of the times, if that strat in Grand Coven was just 4 rerolls to hit and wound, then you could activate your army ability for plus range and then go 4 rerolls to hit and wound for 1 CP, would actually be significantly better. But the fact that strat is 2 CP, I think, is a lot more damning for him. I would almost rather have that at 1 CP, 4 rerolls to hit and wound, not even have the range ability on it, and that be 1 CP, right?
Yep. Yeah. It's so interesting, isn't it? But we haven't got the CP reduction now. We've got no form of CP gain
Yep.
outside of Kairos.
And you don't have
Um,
the two Cabal point just reroll a save
mhm.
as well. So he's actually a lot more vulnerable to just getting hit by like a Lancer or a Vindicator, for example, right?
Yep.
And man, you feel it when when you take the damage on that one. Ballista's Dreadnought, right? I mean, is actually very good against Magnus in a lot of ways.
Mm,
Super long range against Magnus, has AOC of course as well. So you basically take 2 to 3 ups against a lot of his spells,
yep.
and can just, if you get a las cannon through in an early turn in a game, then all of a sudden he's very squishy after that. And I found when I played him, I just actually didn't cast with him very much until like turn 3 or turn 4 or 5.
Damn.
So
Mm.
yeah, it's an interesting one because you're right. When you do take the damage on him, it means that when you need him earlier in the game, he's actually a lot easier to pick off, right?
Yeah, Coven's got the reroll, which does help
Yeah.
on the casting. But the big thing for me, the way I played T Sons before, was he was often the indirect piece. I was playing from a
Mm.
safe part of the board in the first few games. Because he can't do that now, I'm finding it difficult to activate him for the first 2 turns of the game. So he's
Hmm.
kind of just sitting there, threatening, giving out buffs, casting spells. Um,
And
which is
that's why I
that
think
enough for 420?
Well, and that's why I think in those matchups where your opponent can kind of play around him a bit, right? Then he's a lot worse. But obviously, the matchups where you're playing against pressure armies, he's fantastic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Blood Angels or Emperor's Children or World Eaters or Orcs, something like that, right? He's amazing,
Yep.
because you can play him aggressively. But yeah, it's he's a really tough one. I'm really curious to see where they land. I think for WTC, people will play him on the board actually because he just gets the way once you play him on WTC and you see the way that he pivots for free and his staff is like 4 inches longer off the base, like and then the wingtip can see over and into the small ruins, like no other terrain format really has that, and that's
Mm-hmm.
legitimately a really powerful thing. I mean, obviously you
Yep.
can rotate them on other terrain formats, but WTC is very angular in a lot of its ruin placements, so they're usually at like a 30-degree angle, whereas UKTC is like 45-degree angles perpendicular to the board everywhere, which I think is a lot worse
Mm-hmm.
from him,
Mm-hmm.
because he can rotate to see around a ruin, but anything can do that in that terrain format. So
Yep.
I feel like he's an absolutely great, personally.
Ooh, I think he's at the top of B tier personally,
The top of B
because
tier.
I'm trying to look at the entire list and see how we stratify things here.
Yeah, we can always
And
move him. He's the hardest one to land, I
yeah,
think.
I
So
think he's either going to be bottom of A or top of B for me,
cool.
most likely.
Let's go there. Speaking of casting, why don't we crack on to the next one? What about Ahriman?
Oh, you've tried Ahriman, haven't you?
Yeah, I've played him quite a bit. He is okay. First off, let's set some ground rules for the tier list. I think we should rate things in their best attachment.
Mhm.
So I think Ahriman in this one is going to be best in the Zangor detachment.
Oh, the
Rubricai
rubric.
Phalanx.
Yeah.
Actually, he's best in the Rubricai
Yep.
Phalanx detachment, and he's very good in the vehicle detachment, I think, as well. So something to consider there. Let's talk about him in the strongest one, is Rubricai Phalanx, where you can infiltrate a unit of Rubric Marines or Scarab Cult Terminators, but the best builds really are playing the 10-man Rubric Marines with Exalted Sorcerers. I went with Lewis with that. And that will allow you to infiltrate, if you get the first drop, across the board to block any opponent infiltrators, and then put a unit of 5 Rubric Marines where that was, and redeploy your 10-man centrally into the middle of the your staging ruin, for example, as well.
Mhm.
So you get to block a huge infiltrate with them. You then get to put 5 more Rubrics down in place of that in a tough position, and then you get to redeploy your 10-man to a super relevant position later on when you get advanced and shoot as well. So I think he's quite good there, and he's only 100 points. So 100 points is an Exalted Sorcerer on disc, so that's worth counting. And then he does get the +1 to cast. So
Mhm.
a way I like to think about him is he's a +1 to cast Zangor Shaman that has redeploy, and would you pay 45 points for those 2 abilities? It's interesting. Depends how relevant redeploy is. I think his whole data sheet is basically, redeploy.
Mhm.
And for that, I think he's good in the right attachments, I think.
I mean, we're going to get comments about this because I think rules-wise, technically, he can't infiltrate a unit with an Exalted Sorcerer attached to it,
Yeah, yeah.
which significantly reduces the effectiveness in Rubric Phalanx.
Yep.
The timing is really awkward. Start of the that
Yeah.
step.
Yeah, I'm going
Um,
to assume that my personal thing is that I currently believe that you should be able to infiltrate a 10-man Rubik squad and the character. But yeah, that was my analysis was based on that assumption, of course, as
for
well, in the
me,
best
I mean,
attachment.
I think lore-wise, it doesn't make sense for the sorcerer to come up with the rubric. The sorcerer hasn't been underground, has he? These guys have
it's
been
true.
underground. So if they have intended to make it written like this, they've actually done it quite cleverly, because I've been playing Guardian Battle Host. They have a very similar one, but it says at any point during that step. So you can actually
Oh,
attach
interesting.
characters and then infiltrate, because that's called ethereal pathways. So we're assuming they're teleporting through, but
Yep.
maybe they've done this on purpose. That does reduce Ahriman's effectiveness, but I love the +1 to cast on him.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, you have a brilliant video where you go through some maths on the different casting values, and hitting a +2 to cast with a Mutalith, Vortex, Beast, and Ahriman is actually extremely relevant, especially for Temporal Surge.
Yep.
Hitting Temporal Surge and getting 6 inches of movement is critical. And failing that can actually completely dismantle or even lose you a game. So,
I think
Ahriman
+1 to
has some
cast,
value there.
+1 to cast Temporal Surge is a 75% chance on 3d6. +1 on top of that, I believe, would be something like 83, 84%, something like that. So it gives you about +9%.
And you've got the reroll in Coven, so we're pushing that up probably around to 90, aren't we?
Yep. The question is, do you play the Mutalith Beast if you're playing Ahriman? Which is, I think, it's interesting as well, because 75% rerolling, you can try and reroll it across your army. You know, you can roll 2d6, and if it's a low fail, you can then, just try 3d6 with another unit. Should you use Temporal Surge as like you need to hit the 6, or is it more of a gadget piece? Are the spells like central to your game plan now? Are they more like gadget pieces? Is an interesting change, I think, in the Codex overall.
I mean, for me, I think Temporal, because we're playing slightly different armies here, so we may be seeing this from a slightly different lens. For reference, I've been I tried Rubric Phalanx, didn't quite work for me, and I've gone to Grand Coven. And Dave has been experimenting with the vehicles and now the mutant detachment. And you've experimented with everything.
I played them all.
But yeah, you played it with everything. But
and the demon detachment.
The way I look at it is Temporal Surge on Rubric squads can actually be a game pivoting moment. Whereas if that's not the play you're doing, where you're trying to get past a ruin with the Rubric squad, then actually Temporal Surge, it doesn't matter if you hit the big cast. Often D6 movement is enough for what you want to do. Just get you onto an objective, do a mission, something like that. So it depends a little on the context of what you're trying to do, how pivotal it is. But I think Ahriman has some value there. Is it enough to justify 100 points over other choices, particularly Exalted Sorcerers, almost 2 Zangor Shaman?
Almost 2 Zangor Shamans, right?
Yeah.
It's a tough one. I mean, if you had 110 points, would you rather play 2 Zangor Shamans or Ahriman?
Yeah, because
it's very close.
With the 2 Zangor Shaman, if you roll really low on your first 2 dice, you can choose not to channel, fail it, and try and cast again.
And you should be doing that very often, by the way. I think that's an extremely important play sequence for the new Thousand Suns Codex. You roll low. If you really need to hit the channel, then don't roll like a Twist of Fate, for example. Well, actually, that's a bad example. If you, like, Temporal Surge is a good example because it's like a 6 to cast. So if you hit it, then and you roll like a 3-2, then your chance to channel is only going to be a 5 plus is a 30%, right? So just try and re-channel with a higher value of 7, and it's a 50-50 after that. So yeah, I mean, that stuff's really interesting. I think that's one of the cooler little nuances that's come out of the Codex, I think, is like the casting mechanics, how you actually like do your effective value comparisons on like when you should recast, etc., etc. Because I think in armies like Grand Coven, and particularly Rubric Phalanx too, you can actually cast like a bunch of spells. Like, you've got like 8 casts a turn, right? Which is like quite reliable to get off. So yeah. Okay. Where do you think? I think he sits behind Magnus personally.
I personally put him in C tier.
Okay.
I think I think looking at how powerful this Codex is, I think he's going in C tier probably.
I've just found
no.
No. Oh, I gotta change that one. Conditional. I think that's a good,
nice one.
That's a good one. We can go with that one.
Sweet.
That's a cool one. Nice.
Nicely done.
And B is smack bang in the middle. We're not going to change that.
Beautiful. Our next one, the best, the greatest.
The Infernal Master. I mean, how happy were you saw when he didn't change?
His little manta is just flying out doing damage.
And Arcade Vortex is still the same, but renamed. I mean, I was a little bit sad that they renamed that enhancement, but
they renamed it so that no one could actually pronounce it. So, so we still call it Arcade Vortex.
Exactly. Yeah, I think this guy is I mean, Infernal Master. So there's a really interesting discussion around. So a lot of these lists, in my experience, and the ones that we talked about in masterclass, were you play 5 rubric squads. You're playing a 3-2 split of Infernal Masters to sorcerers, or you're playing 3 sorcerers to 2 Infernal Masters. That's a big break point, I think, in the army,
Mhm.
and I don't think it's been solved at all. Like, which is better, sorcerers or Infernal Masters? But usually a lot of these lists end up being, if you're playing 4 rubric marines, it's 2 infernal masters to 2 sorcerers, or you're playing 5, it's 3-2 split, for example.
Mhm.
Which I think goes to show the power level of this guy. I mean, I'm still a big fan of him personally. I think the melee in some regards is actually super relevant on him. And the flip dice on the melee is actually really good, because it just becomes like a failed hit becomes 2, so it's like +3 effectively on your melee. So I think, I mean, he hasn't really changed that much. I think you play him in every single detachment, more or less. And I think I would just happily put him at an A tier for the moment. I think he's super, super good.
Yeah. Oh, it's such an interesting discussion between infernal masters and sorcerers. I think, like, I'm a based person when it comes to statistics.
Sure.
Sometimes, so I'm kind of like half vibe, half actually look at the maths.
Hmm.
And for some reason, the infernal master feels so good.
Oh,
Like,
dude.
like you go into combat and the sustained hits just pop off.
Yeah, exactly
You
right.
you like shoot your soul reaper. For some reason, no one else's soul reaper hits, but that guy's soul reaper will hit
Yeah.
6 times with sixes, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the sustained hits just feels really good. It gives you a bit of confidence when you're doing everything. It's like a
Hmm.
happy kind of little dopamine hit whenever
Yeah.
you hit it. And his flamer allows you to set up Overwatch traps.
Hmm.
And for me personally, when I play the Infernal Master, I prefer his unit to the Sorcerer.
Hmm.
But there is a lot of times that the 10-point difference where the sorcerer is 10 points less comes up in your list building,
Yeah.
and you end up tweaking and downgrading or upgrading between them. I think my takeaway is you want a mixture of those if you're taking lots of rubric squads. But if I was
Hmm.
only going to run, say, 2 rubric squads, I would personally go for Infernal Masters over
Ooh,
sorcerers.
spicy.
What
Nice.
a take.
There we go. Happy in A tier. Well, we can
A tier.
shift
Yeah,
them around
beautiful A
afterwards.
tier.
Nice. I mean, speaking of which, we've got the sorcerer straight away. Let's just crack on. I mean, the sorcerer. So if you didn't know, the sorcerer is like very consistent. The infernal master is kind of inconsistent, but has a higher top end. I think as Vic and I both see it. The infernal master is so much easier to set up these plays where you disembark from your rhino, surge. You can see an opponent's objective. You flame the unit. Grenade, doombolt, something, flame a unit, and then as soon as they move on it, you overwatch. And like, if you flip the objective and done that whole play sequence, then like that's a play sequence you can do time and time again with the army, which is like the more aggressive, proactive way to play the army now compared to before in the army, where you would be, move up from my rhino, double doombolt something, jump back in, like, oh, I've dealt you 11 mortal wounds and you haven't been able to interact with me. I've done that for 2 turns. Now I can pancake you and all in my army. Nowadays, you're actually like skirmishing and being proactive throughout like turns 1 to 5 in the army. This is kind of the way I see it. So
Mhm.
that's where the Infernal Master is really good. The Sorcerer is a lot more consistent in that you go +3 attacks anyway. So it comes up with 8 shots. No,
Nine,
9
nine.
shots on the gun at 811, which, AP1 is a little bit disappointing, but with Twist of Fate, this guy gets a little bit better. Whereas the Infernal Master obviously gets better with Twist of Fate, but not as good. And so I think the way that I see it too is that the Sorcerer can combo with the Zangor bow target a lot more, because typically you're going to have rerolls on that target, or you're going to have Twist of Fate on that target, both of which the Sorcerer benefits a lot from. And then the Sorcerer benefits a lot. I mean, both of them benefit equally from the Rhino, exactly as well. But yeah, I think for me, I just find them. I think the Infernal Master is a little bit better, but I think in most lists where you're playing 4 to 5 squads, you should be splitting either 2 and 2 or 3-2 if you're playing 5. I wouldn't probably play 3-1 if I
Mhm.
was playing 4 units, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So I actually think the sorcerer massively benefits from the rhino, and I think
Hmm.
he's probably the best unit coming out of the rhino here, both to receive the buff, but also for the trade piece potential that you talked about there. An interesting thing I realized was in my head, I had a mental block on how T-Sons actually get through vehicles. I was like, I
Hmm.
don't have Magnus anymore in a lot of the lists that I'm running. How am I going to kill a vehicle? But then I looked at it and I was like, okay, they've gained grenades, massive. So
Yeah.
grenades, doom bolts. If I put Twist of Fate for an additional 1 or 2 AP, and then I hit reroll hits and wounds on this sorcerer,
Hmm.
suddenly just the Soul Reaper cannon and the sorcerer, just those 2 models, are almost doing 12 damage to a knight or vehicle.
Yep.
which is nuts as a trade piece. If you do get your flamers in and also you get +1 to hit and wound, you are happily killing even big vehicles with that.
Yep.
So he is a phenomenal trade piece. And actually, you know, I have a feeling that his value is potentially even higher than the Infernal Master, but in my mind, they're absolutely on par, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
I think there's a super common play pattern where your opponent has a rhino on objective with dudes inside it, and like how you crack that to ultimately be able to flame the guys inside the rhino is like that's the hardest thing in T-Sons, and if you can crack that, it's really big. So like if you have bow goats, you know, you can bring them in, Doombolt, Doombolt, put rerolls on, grenade, and then shoot the bow goats. And if you open the rhino and shoot the unit inside with your Rubik squad, it's like it's pretty hard to lose the game after that because you're then going to overwatch something that comes onto the objective after that as well. So yeah, I agree as well. I mean, we can debate the finer points afterwards, but
yeah.
they're kind of buddies, aren't they? They go side by
Yeah,
side.
they're extremely competitive, and you're going to see both a lot, I think. They're
Yeah.
the staples.
All right, Exalted Sorcerer.
Oh,
Go for it. Probably a bit of a glow up unit, I think, right? Previously, you know, it did get played, provided the 18-inch loan up, but I really prefer the way that they've changed his role around a little bit now.
so it was his one stayed the same, still 4-up invuln. It was the normal sorcerer who had the 18-inch loan up.
The normal sorcerer.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah. So
my
he
apologies.
actually hasn't changed at all, except for his role in some of the detachments. Like
Yeah. You're completely right. I was not playing lone op at WTC as well. Yeah. So obviously the Rubricai Phalanx is like the best unit to detachment to use this guy in, and the reason why he's so good now is because you've got access to fallback, shoot, and charge. And what that means is that you can actually finally invest into this 10-man Rubik unit, use it, get tagged, don't worry about it, fallback, shoot, and charge. So you don't have like a whole lot of points that can just get shut down by someone simply tagging you. Now, where this guy is also good is in the Rubricai Phalanx, you have access to -1 to wound. And then in addition, you have all his dust keyword on top of that. So you get +1 save against damage 1. And then -1 to wound makes this. If you have a 10-man Rubik squad with -1 to wound and +1 save against damage 1 and a 4-up invulnerable save, makes it very hard to knock this unit out in one go. I think 10 JPIs kills like
yeah.
5 of them or 4 of them or something.
So it's -1 to wound in combat, isn't it? But they have -1 damage flat that they can use whenever for 2 CP.
No, other way around. -1 damage is 2 CP only in shooting. -1 to wound is combat or shooting phase, which is actually better.
Okay.
Because
Wow, no way. Okay.
I think the -1 damage is not as good because it's 2 CP, and you know CP economy is really hard to use.
Yep.
I'm gonna like triple check that right now.
I'm going to double check it as well.
Don't
worry, you carry on. Oh, unless you've got it.
Oh, sorry. -1 to wound is only in combat.
Yep.
And -1 to damage is only in shooting. Okay, so we were
Cool.
both equally wrong. But the -1 to wound is obviously, really good. And like these shooting armies is obviously where you're kind of okay with anyway because you stack cover and stuff like that.
Yep.
So yeah, I've been very impressed by this unit. You can take a blow early, and then you can fall back, shoot, and charge, regenerate a model. On a 2 to 5, you get 1 guy back. On a 6, you get 2, which feels really good as well. You've got a 3 wound model there as well, so you can kill the 3 wound model, resurrect him back on a 2 to 5, which means if you're against damage 2, you're effectively bringing back 2 models there as well.
Yeah.
Really
nice.
Shoot
back as well if you take the sorcerer out with the Rubric Phalanx.
I found the shoot back. I was going to say I found the shoot back to be really conditional, kind of hard to set up and use.
I mean, it'll never come up. It'll never come up, but your opponent knows it exists, so they will change their play, and you'll obviously tell your opponent not to walk into it. But it's a play pattern that we really like, Dave, I think, because you love putting a model out on a middle objective with the Death Orb of Krieg, models that regenerate like this. I've been playing a lot with using a unit of rangers in Yannari and just sticking 1 or 2 models and being like, okay, you have to deal with this in some way, but actually I'm going to not really lose much if you try and deal with this. It's very similar with 10 rubrics and an Exalted Sorcerer. So he's not bad at all.
It's pretty hard to go wrong with this unit in all seriousness. I mean, you've got a unit that can threaten the midpoint primary by resurrecting onto it. You've got a unit which can be a bit of a hammer piece on top of that. You've got, it can play other roles where it can soak damage against like pressure armies, right? It's pretty good all-rounder, and Rubricai Phalanx is definitely its best one. That being said, I think that's probably the primary detachment you play it in.
Mhm.
Because Coven, you can obviously get back into a Rhino, which is okay, but realistically, you kind of want to be falling back, shooting, and charging with it. And the advance and shoot on this unit is very good because you want to play it on the board, not out of a Rhino so much. So you can have 2 units in the Rhino instead, I find. So
Uh,
I'm kind of I don't mind putting him behind Magnus personally,
yeah.
because he is a little bit situational
I mean,
into the best
I'll just say
detachment.
for Coven, for the case for Coven, I think he will see a lot of play in Coven.
Oh, okay.
Mainly because the double Doom Bolt enhancement has to be on an Exalted Sorcerer. So I
Okay,
think
yeah.
there is a chance you often see one Exalted Sorcerer in rubrics if someone's
Yep.
not running the guy on a disc.
Okay,
But
why
I
don't we
think,
go? You
I
want to put
think,
him in ahead of Magnus?
no, I think Magnus
Okay,
is better.
where he was before. Sure.
Yeah, you were in the right place.
Nice. All right, let's power through it. We got the Exalted Sorcerer on disc. This guy is a little bit of a sleeper pick, and I think this changes a lot if you're playing singles or teams in a lot of ways. Uh, this guy was used to be extremely good. I mean, geez, -2 to advanced charge and move. He was like very tanky. He could do cabals from him. Like he was a great Doom Bolt. You could put Lord of Forbidden Law on him for the second Doom Bolt. Go through walls, trigger your indirect. His role has changed a lot now, I think. But he's gained a lot of versatility because there's another unit that he combos with, which is very powerful, and that's the Zangor shamans with great bows. That's I think his best use case. I've personally find his gun a little bit swingy. It's just D6 shots. It's a huge difference if you roll like kind of 3 or 4 or 5 shots. I mean, obviously, so he can be a little bit swingy for my liking, but he is very fast and he gains infantry mounted. I think nowadays as well. So you can put him in a Rhino, and I'm going to double triple check right now if
Yeah,
he's a grenade
he
keyword.
is infantry. I mean, he was just infantry before, but now he's infantry mounted.
Yeah.
So that really hasn't changed. He has lost 2 inches of movement, which is quite
Yep.
relevant. And
hmm
now temporal surge is not a full move, so he's considerably slower than he was before.
hmm
I personally really like his gun. I think it's one of the better psychic guns and better than the
Oh.
Exalted Sorcerer's gun, personally.
Okay.
But I don't think it's as good as the Infernal Master and the Sorcerer in terms of output.
Yep.
But having a pocket -2 to charge, having another flamer for Overwatch in a different place, he's, in my opinion, quite solid for 100 points.
hmm
And
Has a grenade keyword as well.
yeah, they've all of them gaining the grenade keyword is
Yeah.
pretty amazing.
Mm.
I really like the Exalted Sorcerer on disc,
Oh.
and I
Okay.
think we'll see as people develop their lists. I think he wasn't in the initial set of lists, and I think we'll see him more and more in a lot of
Yeah,
lists
for sure.
going forward.
And yeah, the point I was going to make on the teams list is that just playing this guy with 6 bow goats makes you an 18-inch lone op unit that shoots 30 inches, and that's very, very good. If you're playing a teams list on open boards, for example, light tables, playing this in the vehicle detachment with a couple of goat units with lone op as well, really powerful. Considering they have a huge OC count as well after that, so I get a 180 point unit that can shoot lone op. And then you can jump on an opponent's objective the next turn, out OC them and stuff like that as well. It's a good way of creating a differential.
Mhm.
So quite good. All right, where are you liking this guy? You seem pretty high on him.
Yeah, I think he's in A tier, just below the Sorcerer.
Okay,
What do you think, Dave?
I was gonna put him maybe. I'm happy to go with your reasoning on this one. That's
Me
absolutely
and the
fine.
Exalted Sorcerer, we have a lot of history. I love that guy.
Okay, what about El Demon Arenos? These
Yeah.
guys, like, I'm just gonna say it now. I've never liked Demon Princes. It's not that I don't like the models, but I classically look at a model like that and I think, man, this is a big, slow unit. Not very hard to play around. Am I really getting 200 points of value out of it? Has that been your experience as well?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think there is a use case for both of these. We could probably
hmm
do these together, the Demon
Yeah,
Prince and the
sure.
Winged Demon Prince. They have a little bit of value in T-Suns just because they provide some element of melee,
hmm
which is a little better than a Mutalith Vortex Beast, worse than Magnus, but sits somewhere in the middle, and they both provide these interesting, unique roles.
hmm
There is an advantage to the Demon Prince on foot giving stealth, but
Yep.
you're playing a lot more in rhinos now, I think,
Yeah,
than you used to. So,
exactly.
so really, is his value that high? So I think the more interesting out of the two.
Oh, I have just Vicky lagged out. What was the more interesting part?
Am I back?
You're back. Yes.
Oh, fantastic. Okay,
You're
yes.
back.
The Was I talking about the Winged Demon Prince?
Yes, you just cut off when you got to the more
Ah,
interesting part. So I'm just sitting here waiting to hear about it.
the more interesting part is the Winged Demon Prince. So the
Uh,
Winged Demon Prince having a short range, a 6-inch deep strike, essentially, with a shooting attack that can also take advantage of Arcane Vortex if you want a completely different style of play. Sure, it probably is not the optimal competitive approach to take, but it provides something that you just don't really have anywhere else.
yep.
Um, it's a relatively durable unit that can cast a spell in a different area of the board. And sometimes I found T-Suns to struggle a little bit to penetrate certain areas of the board. So
Mhm.
having a Demon Prince come in and do a little trading in the corner of the board is quite interesting, in my opinion. I
Nice.
would say that they're both not the most competitive thing in the world, but I think I
Mhm.
could see people trying to run one of them, especially the Winged Demon Prince.
Yeah, and the most popular version I've seen of it is with the Arcane Vortex on the winged one. It's got a shooting platform and a melee platform on top of that, and you can give it the Arcane Vortex, which I think is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, obviously, Arcane Vortex with Overwatch shooting twice with an Infernal Master is pretty hard to pass up on. I think if you've got
Yeah.
a Demon Prince at home and it's lovely painted, it's not the worst thing to slot into an army. That's kind of how I would define it, I think. But
Yeah.
it doesn't have a clear build around path for anything, I don't think.
I think the points that he occupies in your list building is occupied by a lot of interesting vehicle choices, which
Yes,
you're
exactly.
essentially choosing between this or am I going to take another one of the vehicles we're going to talk
Yep.
about. And I have a feeling he falls short both of the Demon Princes compared to
Yep.
pretty much all of the other options we have.
So probably in conditional. Do you think
Yeah.
the Winged Demon Prince is better than the normal foot one? I guess, right?
Yeah, I would personally even put the foot
Oh,
one in D tier.
oof,
Oh,
oof.
oh,
You heard it here first,
sad
folks.
times.
First dumpster tier unit. I
Oh,
need like a ding.
not quite Emperor's Children.
Sorry, bud. Sorry. Uh, okay, this next one I'm quite fond of.
Okay, this is all yours.
Yeah, because this guy is definitely good in one detachment. I remember when I first did the detachment review, the very first thing I think I said in our team chat was like, guys, you can put a Terminator Sorcerer with a Predator Annihilator or Destructor, deep strike this guy, shoot his ability, proc the Psychic Weapon or Doombolt, and then get +1 to hit. I was like, that's a good combo. Like that's, +2 abilities on a Predator, and you get the Psychic ability. That's pretty strong. And this guy in the masterclass we talked about, Saka was playing 3 of these in his list. Starting 2 on the board, you can make one a lone op, which is nice.
Oh.
They can cast your spells and they can still do actions. And they're hard to kill. Like your opponent's not really targeting your 2 up, 5 up. Terminator, Sorcerer, and cover when they can be shooting your vehicle. So this guy's pretty good. I don't really see him getting played in any other detachment, though. That's the problem. So, like I said, vehicle detachment I think is definitely good, and I think teams will play the vehicle detachment at WTC. I think that's certainly viable. It is a very good open board shooting detachment as well, and in that you're playing quite a few of them. So I think his power level is quite good. I think I don't. Okay, I've got to change something a little bit, Vic.
Mm.
I think Ahriman is a little bit better than conditional
Hmm.
because I think in list you're going to see him pop up a little bit more.
You think so?
Yeah, the main
Yeah.
reason I say this is because the I think the sorcerer is maybe at like the bottom of B tier somewhere up here. If you know what I
Ah,
mean. And I definitely think Ahriman, if you look at over the course of all the lists, is definitely better than a sorcerer. He gets
mm.
played in kind of multiple detachments here. Does that make sense?
Sure. Got it. Okay. Yeah.
Nice.
Fine.
Okay, next up we've got Sekitar robots. I don't know if I said that correctly, but
You did. Yeah.
that's the way I'm pronouncing it.
So
Do
the
you like?
Sekitar robots, I think, so they're 90 points, which is
Mhm.
a lot cheaper than what it looked like they were going to be at the back of the book, which is nice. This 90 points is actually pretty decent for their defensive
Mhm.
profile, having infiltrate stealth, having like a decent amount of firepower coming out of them, but suffering from having a 4+ to hit across the board. Now,
Yeah.
the question with the Sekitar robots is not so much are they a good unit on paper, because they are a good unit on paper for their points. It's more, are you really taking them to achieve a role that you need in the army?
Mm.
And what are you losing, or what else could you choose instead of them?
Mhm.
And that's where they fall short, in my opinion. because
Yep.
I don't think T-Suns need a small model count infiltrating unit. What they
Mm,
need is a high model count infiltrating unit, really more than a low model count one.
for sure.
And they're OC1 as well, so they really
Yeah.
don't apply any kind of primary pressure here. They're also
Hmm.
vehicles, so they don't go through walls.
Yep.
So they aren't actually achieving a role that you need, because if it's only about the firepower, then you have much better options than the Secretary robots for firepower. If it's
Yes.
about the melee, then actually their melee is pretty rubbish. It's like it's not good enough to be good.
It's not the best. These guys get significantly better in the vehicle detachment, I will say.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think in
Rerolls.
the vehicle detachment you do play like a unit of 4 of them,
Okay.
because the melee there is actually like somewhat relevant.
Mhm.
You do get the hit, wound, and damage reroll, right? So that like actually makes them significantly different. But I agree. Like I think if you think about a 90-point unit, would you rather have a sector, or would you rather almost just about have a full rhino? And
Yeah, well, or
9 times out of
six
10,
bowgoats, or another rubric
you
squad,
would definitely
or
rather have 6 bow goats, yes. Yeah, even 6 melee goats, right? Like 6 melee goats, if you just charge your opponent's objective, probably fine, right? Or someone's infiltrated near your expansion objective. Just 6 melee goats going and trying to kill 5 scouts is probably going to be better than the 2 robots, right?
Mhm.
So I completely agree. I think conditional is probably a good realm to see them in. I
Yeah,
do think they're a little bit better than the Demon Prince, though,
I
to be
think
honest.
so. I'd agree.
Mr. Roboto, do you like them aesthetically, Vic?
I'm the only one apparently who likes them aesthetically. How about you, Dave?
Yeah, I think they're pretty cool. Yeah, I don't hate them.
Their artwork, they look incredible, but they didn't quite manage to transfer the relative scale of the model's body into the actual model.
Yeah,
Because the artwork, they look insane. They look really dynamic
yeah,
and imposing, but it's quite hard to get that in kind of a static 3D model compared to a
yeah.
2D
Their
image.
their pose is very rigid, and they are
Mm,
quite small. If they were larger and a little bit more dynamically posed, I think it was a big win there for
yeah,
sure.
cool concept, but they could have done with. I wish they were fast. If they'd
Oh
done
yeah,
them as rather than sentinels, like weirdly deceptively fast, I think that would have been cool.
yeah, nice. On like a big base as well, like a thousands of like the
Oh, can
scout
you
sentinel side.
imagine?
Oh, that'd
Like
be
one
so
just like
cool.
crouching down, shooting behind
Yeah.
them or something.
Oh, that'd be so
Yes.
badass. All right, Scarab Occult Terminators. Oof, this is an interesting one. SOTs got a lot better. I'm just going to refer to them as SOTs. They got a lot better than they have been for a long time, to be fair. They've been pretty bad since basically 9th edition, since we've played them. And Rubricae Phalanx, they're actually legitimately pretty good in. I had a build that I played against Chris Radford with 20 Scarab Occult Terminators, which was actually good. Like you could definitely go 4-1 with a GT with that build, which is nice. And you don't have to pay. You don't play them with the character anymore. So in Rubricae Phalanx, regardless of how that rule goes, in terms of the infiltrate rule, you can still infiltrate that unit, which is nice, I think,
Hmm.
in there as well. Um, I have found that their shooting and output is a little bit lackluster
Oh
compared to what
no.
you always think it will be. They always usually just hit on threes, unless you have a Terminator Sorcerer, I guess, to amplify that maybe. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. I think. Hmm, I definitely do not think they're better than the Terminator Sorcerer, that's for sure.
Mhm.
But I do think they're better than the robots and the Demon Prince, unironically.
Oh.
I think there's definitely a build where you could win a small GT, go 4-1 at a big GT with genuinely 20 Scarab Occult Terminators, or just 10. Uh, just rapid ingress them or infiltrate them. They got a lot better, I think, and they came down in points. You're not a
Hmm.
fan?
I mean, yeah, okay, the -1 to wound is something,
Yeah.
but I just feel there are so many sources of +1 to wound, so many mortal wounds everywhere.
Yeah.
To combine that with low output and not really having synergy with detachments. I mean,
Yeah. It's true.
they kind of do in the Rubricae Phalanx, but you can't save up and use the -1 damage to like blunt someone's shooting phase, because
No.
for some reason they're excluded from that.
Yeah.
Um,
They also have their. I actually found that the 3 wound bracket is kind of tough these days, because there's actually a lot of guns that just have flat 3, or a lot of melee profiles that have flat 3. So it's not like the old days where like flat 3 was kind of uncommon, and plasmas was really prevalent. So yeah,
I
lower than the Winged Demon
actually,
Prince.
I mean, personally,
Oh, no way, no way
uh,
are they in the dumpster tier, bro.
My heart says no, but my mind says yes to that. But I think they are just below the Sekitar robots.
Okay, that's I can deal with that.
But they're not what they needed to be. See, I
Okay.
think what they needed was, the stratagem to give yourself psychic bolters, strength 5 psychic bolters. What they really
Yeah.
needed is if they're led by a character, if there's a sorcerer in the unit, it's not that you get -1 to wound, you get increased output. That's
Yeah.
what they need. It needs to be like a
Yeah.
hammer hit squad
Yeah.
that is kind of moderately tough just because it's a Terminator,
Yeah.
rather than it's only moderately tough.
Yeah. I mean, they should hit on 2s if there's a character in the unit by default. I mean, that doesn't seem like a big
I
ask,
mean, the
really.
Terminator Sorcerer links nicely with that. That's the thing. But actually, there's no output from the unit.
Well, the Terminator Sorcerer has to hit a unit, right? Then you get
Oh,
+1 to hit, but you're also joined with the unit, so the activation technically happens at the same time, right?
it's just a mess, Dave.
Yeah. So not the best worded on that one.
Just a mess. Yeah, it should be a pick at the start of the shooting phase. Someone,
Of course, right?
Yeah.
Or fight phase or anything, right? Yeah. At least they got a lot better than they were before. Okay, next up, the first S tier unit we're going to have. But S tier should be nerfed, but man, I feel like Rubrics got quite a bit better this edition. I mean, they came down in points.
Do you think they got better?
Yeah, well, they came
Okay.
down in points, right?
10 points, yeah.
10 points. And so, yeah, I feel like they kind of line up pretty well here, man. I mean, I think every build you see is... Actually, they should not be in the should be nerfed category. Don't get me wrong there. But I think they're just like straight up top of A. Every single build I see, the most competitive ones are playing 20 to 30 rubrics. That's the core of every single list. Rubrics and rhinos is the core if you're playing rubric I phalanx, if you're playing coven, even mutate uses it a lot, and even the vehicle detachment uses some rubrics,
So my way of looking at this, is that actually the Rubric Squad 100 points, I think is pretty appropriately priced here.
Okay.
The actual unit itself is mostly like a reroll ones to wound and a reroll wounds on objectives caddy. The ignore cover doesn't get transferred to the character. The
Sure.
flamers already have ignore cover, so you're really getting the soul reaper and the psychic attack, which has dev wounds. As a unit, I actually don't think it's anything special without the character attached to it. Like the
Okay.
character is the meat of that
Okay.
unit, because the character gives you a second cast. The character does the bulk of the damage as well, and then the unit supplements the damage a little bit. I would argue the Rubric Squad in terms of power level is actually just below the Sorcerer and above the Exalted on disc.
Okay. Let me shoot something back though. The Sorcerer did go up +1 wound, which is very nice.
Yeah.
A lot of the times you're taking damage too. You roll some 5-ups, you just lose like one Sorcerer, right? Which is really good. And then in addition to that, none of the characters are good unless you have Rubric Marines. Apart from the Exalted Sorcerer on disc.
Yeah, he's the only
sure.
one.
But if none of them are good without Rubric Marines, are Rubric Marines better than them? It's a tough one.
Yeah, it's both ways, isn't it?
Yeah, of
but
course, right.
But I just think maybe they're all on equal. They're all on par there. So they could go either side of it, but I don't think it's the Rubric Marines that make the squad special. I think it's the characters using the Rubric Marines. That's like their war gear almost.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I mean that's typically how it's been as well, of course, in the past as well. Okay, that's fine. I will yield again. They're definitely better than an Exalted Sorcerer on disc. Let's not.
Yeah, it's that combo.
It's better than the Sorcerer as well.
Those three together. Yeah, they're kind of together. They're all on par with each other.
I could probably separate them as well. Like this guy's kind of down here as well. Like he's not like. We could use the distance as like a a gap changer here. All right. Okay, let's get on to some vehicles. Man, the vehicles have gotten a lot better. And I think that's in combination of a couple of things. They got a little bit cheaper. And the playstyle of the army has kind of changed a little bit, where like having this consistent back-end shooting is actually kind of important in the army now. Depending on how like your playstyle and obviously the board that you're playing on. I was really impressed, obviously, as a vehicle user myself. I was really impressed by both of the Predator variants, but particularly I was impressed by the anti-infantry one a lot. I think in the vehicle detachment, it goes up to strength 10 -2, flat 3. And then the bolters go up to like strength 6 -3 damage 2 with sustain, which when you put 4 rerolls onto things, it's really nice. And the anti-infantry one, even if you're shooting a tank, will get Twist of Fate, so it becomes AP2 or AP3 as well, which I think is really nice there. And you have access to +1 to wound in that detachment as well. So, yeah, I've been really impressed by them. I think a lot of lists, you'll see like one Forge Fiend or one Predator. The one with the las cannons is even nice to fill out some profiles that you don't have really access to. Yeah, I think like just seeing one of them doesn't look really weird in a list anymore. I think if you're seeing two of them, I think they're good. And then obviously the Forge Fiend, I think is good on top of that as well. What about you? Both of the Predators, Vic.
They're just good, aren't they? At 130 and 140? Are they 130 or
I think it's
135?
135, 140, yeah, off the top of my head.
No, it's 130 for the Annihilator. I know that. So I think it's maybe 140 for the Destructor. I think they're both very aggressively priced, but they come with a little drawback in that they really need a Psyker to have made an attack on their target, which I think personally is a little more awkward than it sounds.
Okay.
Especially if you compare it to the Mutalith and the Forge Fiend, which kind of operate a little bit solo here and kind of live in a similar points bracket. So I think they're very, very good, and I think we're going to see a lot of single or double Predator Annihilators in lists. The
Yep.
Predator Destructor suffers from overlapping a little bit in terms of profile with both the Zangor Enlightened with Bows and Rubric Marines.
Yep.
They kind of hit the same targets, just at range.
Yep.
So I think we're more likely to see the Predator Annihilator.
Okay, and just for context, because I always get the two confused, the Annihilator is the
triple
anti-vehicle
las
cannon one. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So where should we put these? I definitely think they're better than Terminator Sorcerer. I think they're arguably better than Ahriman.
Yeah, I think we need to
well.
rejig this personally.
Yeah. Well, we can rejig as much as we want. We have the technology.
I would personally say that I think the Winged Demon Prince needs to go down a tier here.
Yep. Get this guy out of here. Sure.
Yep, and I think those two are good at the bottom of C tier.
Yeah, dumpster tier is really harsh.
But this is the point where I do think Ahriman is conditional here.
Okay.
And
yep.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Sure. So where do you want? Just direct me.
I think Ahriman and the Thousand Sun Sorcerer, the Terminator Sorcerer, need to go to the top of C tier, looking at some of the other things that are about to come up.
Okay, cool.
And I also think the Exalted Sorcerer belongs there. I don't think he's as good a datasheet as what's about to come into this space. Oh, it's a powerful C tier. The Reddit comments are going to go mental.
Exalted Sorcerer is pretty good, man.
No,
I think you even play him in Grand Covenant. I don't know.
I think he's
the one
worse,
build, he's very good.
He's worse than the chassis, I think.
He's more conditional than the chassis, I think. I think he really opens up the build, though. That's the problem.
See, for me, I think anytime you take an Exalted Sorcerer, you should look at yourself in the mirror and say, should this be an Infernal Master?
That is true. But if you already have 3 Infernal Masters, that is more difficult.
You should look at yourself in the mirror and be like, should this be a Sorcerer?
Okay, let's do this. I'll believe you on the other 3.
Okay,
but we'll have to be compromise. Political here. So you think the Annihilator and the Destructor, right?
Yeah.
So you think the Destructor is better?
I think the Destructor maybe is top of C tier. The Annihilator. Yeah, okay. Oh, yeah, something like that.
The Destructor is top of C tier, and the Destructor is... God, I always literally...
That's the anti-infantry one.
Yes, okay, sure. It's the one that I liked, but, you know...
It is really good. It's just in terms of role, it overlaps a little bit.
Yeah, well, I think when we do let's do the Forge Fiend next then, because I think that'll overlap really well here with what you're thinking is. Destructor is here, and the Annihilator is going to be over here. Cool, awesome. And we can adjust later. Nice. And, okay, let's do the Forge Fiend next. I've been really impressed by this guy.
Yeah,
he too. Has gotten significantly better due to not much else, but the biggest nerf to the army, which is the casting, in my opinion. He's a lot better because, 4 rerolls to hit on this guy is really nice. And actually, this guy kind of fills a bit of a pocket which the army's weak against, in my opinion, which is like these, Death Guard's really popular and really powerful right now. And I think this guy is surprisingly just really good at killing Plague Marines. And like the Terminators have 3 wounds as well, and
Terminators have 4.
No, there's the Blight Lords and the Death Shrouds. There's one of them that has 3 wounds.
Okay, maybe the Blight Lords have 3.
Yeah. I played against them on the weekend. And so I think that's really valuable. And the Plague Marines are toughness 5. So, well, T5 or T6?
6.
They're higher than your Rubric Flamer, which is the most important part. So can be quite tricky to kill sometimes, I think. Blast is really good into the Krieg blobs as well, and AP3 is nice there as well. 36-inch range is perfectly fine to play at, and 140 points is actually pretty cheap, right? Like, you consider an Exalted Sorcerer or a Mutalith Beast, it's only 40 more points than Exalted Sorcerer on disc, and then 20 less than a Mutalith Beast. And a 5-up invuln in the chassis, naturally, it's actually very good into like any anti-tank long-range shooting on top of that as well. So I've been quite impressed with the Forge Fiend. He's in a couple of my lists, and I think you're probably on the same wavelength there, I suspect.
I have a Forge Fiend in every single one of my lists.
Booyah!
And at the moment, I have really liked the Forge Fiend. It is the perfect versatility between anti-infantry, anti-tank. It's anti-everything.
Yes.
Maybe not amazing at either because it's a little unpredictable with the ectoplasma cannons, but still brilliant. And I think actually brings a lot more to the list than either of the Predator chassis here. You're going top of B. I'm going A.
You're going to go A.
I think it's A tier. I think that's the best chassis in my opinion, especially because it's priced at 140 points. That's aggressive.
Come on. I mean, is it better than the Defiler? Like, come on. Okay. Okay. I will succeed again. Let's go for. I think he's better than Exalted Sorcerer on disc. Personally.
Yes, I agree.
But I think there are some builds where the Exalted Sorcerer on disc is like. Builds and matchups where the Exalted Sorcerer on disc is like very, very good.
They're very
like,
similar.
This is very frustrating to play against. The fact that you can shoot me with bow goats and I can't shoot you back. So there's that caveat to it.
Maybe I think the Exalted Sorcerer on disc should be higher. Actually,
you think?
I think so. I think that's a more powerful unit.
We've got some good stuff coming though.
Here we go.
Okay, why don't we just Mr. Mutalith? God, this guy is.
Go on, Mr. 3,
he's still good, man.
Blitz.
This model is particularly good in the mutate detachment. I will be honest with you. I was very impressed by him. He put I don't really think the mutate detachment is written that well in the sense that it doesn't matter if their strength is greater than your toughness. You still get -1 to wound. And let's say, for example, someone's shooting 4 las cannons at you at your Mutalith. Oh no, here's a better one. They're shooting 4 multi-melter shots at you, right? Well, they're wounding on 5s. You crank that, you take D3 mortals, which is 2 on average, and you basically take 1.5 mortal wounds on average every time you activate them. They then halve their chance to wound you from 5s to 6s, right? I mean, that's kind of ridiculous. You're taking half damage for 1.5 mortal wounds, honestly. And when it's a melter, that's a huge deal, obviously. So if you think about it, and this is how I think about it in my head, I think, would I take 1.5 mortal wounds to have them fail a melter shot to wound? I'd be like, of course I would. So very, very good. I mean, I think his role, I was super surprised that he wasn't nerfed, to be honest with you. I was really surprised he kept the 5-up Feel No Pain, because I thought surely that's going to go to a 6-up Feel No Pain. His railgun actually gained 12 inches of range, which I had no idea as well. It lost a point of AP, but gained 12 inches of range. Arguably is better in some regards. His mortal wound ability is his best ability. And you can contest objectives by causing battle shocks. AOC4, he's the definition of the all-rounder for the whole Codex, I think. I mean, is there a situation where a Mutalith Beast is bad?
Yeah, combat, shooting, OC, toughness, and it's packaged at 160 points, which is a little too cheap, I think.
+1 to cast when you channel as well.
+1 to cast is just really pushed as kind of a signature unit for T-Suns, clearly here. But I think it's overtuned. I think this is our first one that we've really hit.
Should be nerfed.
That needs to be nerfed.
And I think the definition of should be nerfed is there are clearly some changes you could make to it. One of which would just be putting 15 points on it, I think, right? Just put 15 points on it. I think it's a little bit too strong. It's in every single list, I think, in the mutate detachment. It's going to be so interesting to see see if anyone picks the mutate detachment to try and bust and play. But because I don't think it has the same raw power as other things, but it's in every single list. It can be pretty frustrating to play against, I think. I don't want to say auto win against Eldar, but it's extremely good against that army as well.
Good against Eldar.
Good at battle shocking things. Should be nerfed. Put 15 points on it, I think.
Yeah, but I think points is the way to fix that unit.
Yeah. Should we go with the next should be nerfed?
Oh, yeah. What, are you going to skip a few ahead?
Let's just go to the Zangor bows. This is clearly the top of should be nerfed. This unit is way too cheap for the damage it does. It basically got +2 AP, which is insane because also the new spell benefits them the most as well with lethal hits. extremely good unit. I think every single top end competitive list I see is 18 bow goats. And for some reason, going from 3 to 6 is only 30 points, which I don't really understand. Because the 6s are so much better than the 3s, because of the
Uh,
way that your spells
they
work.
wanted to stop it from being chaff. You see, I think that's what
Yeah.
happened here. It's
They're not chaff,
basically,
they're like a lot of damage.
but giving them like like you said, they ignore cover, lethal hits, and precision
Yeah.
on. So 5-2-2 ignore cover is a really good profile
Yeah.
for shooting for 80 points.
One of the
So
things that clicked with me when I first started adjusting to the new codex was like, these guys are not your like contest to primary objective, something like that. They're like sit back and shoot for like 4 turns, and if you really can't break a primary or something like that, then use them for that. But like if you need to kill plague marines, you need to kill regular marines, you need to kill a vindicator, and you get twist of fate and 4 rerolls, then yeah, you're actually in that range. Like with Twist of Fate, these guys are 5-3-3, 5-3-2 with ignore cover, which is kind of bananas when you think about it. Uh, these I do not see why these guys would not be 100 points for 6. Even then, I think. Let's say you're playing a competitive list with 18 bow goats or boats. Your list takes 60 points. You're probably still playing 18 boats. You know, at 100 points.
yeah, I think they got the data sheet a little bit wrong here. So I think the most likely thing is it's going to get nerfed on both sides, both
Sure.
the 3 and the 6, and the 3 with the spears is going to end up being your cheap chaff choice
Yeah.
going forward from here, because I think it's going to be a very popular unit. So
Yeah, for sure. And
yeah.
it's a little bit boring when every Thousand Suns list is like 18 boats, starts at 18 boats.
Yeah, I mean, I can see a lot of Coven lists not running 18. Like they're really good, but there's a bit of a benefit, for example, for two times 6 goats being some long range shooting in Coven,
Yeah.
like some Forge Fiend type shooting, because you
Yep.
may not have the triple mutaliths for the anti tank that you need
And
in
to
that
clarify,
list.
instead of when you say you see a lot of lists not playing 18, you mean playing 15, right?
No, no, they might just have one unit of 6 and then
Oh, okay,
little
okay.
units of 3 as chaff, for
Okay,
example.
that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
50
like
points.
I have a lot of different lists here, and it goes from a mixture of having 18 bow goats all the way down to having like 12 when 633. But they're in every list. They're really nice.
The problem is, why would you not play a Zangor Shaman at plus 5 points that can also cast and
Mhm.
go, and go through a wall, right?
Yeah,
So,
it depends. For example, you've got to have a backfield holder here, and
yeah.
I actually think 3 Zangor Enlightened is perfect for a backfield hold.
Interesting.
You
Yeah.
don't actually need the full unit of 10 Zangor to do it in the current meta. So
But the 10 Zangor can uppy downy on last turn, and you can temporal surge them,
yeah,
which
they
is
can. So if you have the
that's pretty
points, you have
nice.
the points. But
Yeah, it's true.
20
Of course,
points
yeah.
is 2 sorcerers becoming Infernal Masters. So.
This is true. This is also true as well. Yeah. I mean, they're the cheapest thing to hold your backfield as well, of course. So they have the role in being the cheapest. I mean, would you not just play 2 units of 6 and then buy the melee ones, for example? You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah. I think my latest list actually has 6 units of Zangor, so
Yeah.
Zangor on
Right.
disc. So
Nice.
I do like the 3-man units because they give you OC6, which is
Yeah.
quite a good primary denial option on some terrain formats.
Yeah.
UKTC, there's usually quite a direct straight line to your opponent's expansion to hold
Yep.
it from the outside, and it's because it's only 3 models at OC2. You actually can get OC6 onto
Yep.
opponent's
Which is
expansions quite
nice.
nicely. So
For sure.
I've quite liked them, but I also have a Zangor Shaman in the list, so
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
we have even more.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you want to play all 18 bow goats, you could just put the melee ones in anyway, right? So,
Yeah,
and they fill that role because the role you're talking about is not really dependent on their weapon. It's more just
correct.
like, well, okay, yeah. Okay, let's continue with Zangors.
Oh yeah.
Okay, what are your thoughts on 10 Zangors?
Okay, 10 Zangor, they gained Scout, they're OC1, and they've got Uppy Downy.
Hmm.
Their melee is not very relevant and they're not very tough. But they're only 70 points for the 10. They are the alternative to what cultists were. I think if we
Yep,
still had cultists, we probably would still take cultists at 50 points over the Zangor at
I
70.
think you would probably play 3 units of cultists probably because the
Because
CP gain is big as well.
oh yeah, that was
Yeah,
let's say even without the CP gain ability, I think 10-man kind of 50-point unit is really useful.
100%.
The Zangor are on slightly bigger bases, so like I mean, you're going to have a lot of opinions about the mutant detachment, but
Hmm.
outside of the mutant detachment, let's take Coven, Rubrique. I think they're a very important piece for managing melee pressure for those armies. Because actually 10 Zangors lined up when you do Temporal Surge is actually a massive screen and buys you an entire turn,
Yep.
which is very powerful. And if they aren't used for that purpose, they still can be a great late game piece or a good expansion objective holder.
Yep.
What about you, Dave?
I think they're absolutely auto-include in every build that you play.
Oh, okay.
The 10-man unit, at least one 10-man unit, and it doesn't matter what detachment you play, you should definitely play one of these guys. I think one of the most powerful game plans you can have in Thousand Suns is pre-game. If you go first, pre-game move, advance. They re-roll advances, so you're consistently hitting like a 4 or 5. So you move 6 plus, let's say, 10, 16, Temporal Surge, 22. And if you can move block your opponent with Thousand Suns and then stage on or near the objectives, it is such a hard time for your opponent to play the game after that. And that, I think these guys increase your go first win percentage dramatically. And even if they don't, you scout move back, you can uppy downy on turn 1. Like, it's so hard to go wrong with this unit. The move block, I think, is just devastating. It doesn't even matter what army you play against a lot of times. If you're playing against a shooting army, move block them turn 1. You play against a combat army, move block them turn 1. Move block them so they have to charge you on an objective, so you kill them for free afterwards. Absolutely insane unit. I mean, Cultists, if Cultists at 55 points didn't even give you a CP, I would probably play close to 30 Cultists in T-Suns now. At 55 points, I mean, that's outrageously cheap. So I'm really high on these guys. I think unlocking the pregame move where you move block your opponent is bonkers strong, I think. And Mutate, they're obviously very good. Like, that's your primary strategy. You play the 20-man, uppy downy, Temporal Surge, OC2, move block your opponent's entire army, and then you like stage everything so that you can like hit them on the next turn and activate your stuff. Because Thousand Suns, I think, have this one difficulty they can get into is when your opponent can shoot your staging position or like breach your staging position and have gone first. Because then all of a sudden you're kind of on the back foot the whole game. Whereas Zangors really let you recover not being on the back foot even if you go second, in my opinion. Because then you could still stage them into a ruin and then move block Temporal Surge, an area of the board that you want to try and control, and use your rhinos for like your turn 2 play. I think they're absolutely critical, me personally. I would definitely... I would put them above the sorcerer, but that's just me, for example.
The sorcerer?
Yes, yeah.
Not the sorcerer. Not like this.
Okay. I've done my spiel, but I'm definitely putting them above the Exalted Sorcerer on disc. That is not even close in my opinion.
Put them in there. Nice.
I think there's some games where you can just almost auto win when you move block your opponent on turn 1.
See, I have never been a fan of jailing someone in their deployment zone because I have never found it works. Like,
really?
it's never worked against me, and I've never made it work. I've done like a couple of targeted move blocks around transports and things just to...
No, I'm going to call your bluff here. This is some fucking bullshit. If we played and I played guard versus Eldari, you would jail me every single turn.
No, I wouldn't.
Just move block with warp spiders and
I just move block like one spot with 5 warp spiders.
But that's what I'm talking about. You're not trying to jail the whole deployment zone. You're trying to jail like where you go for your expansion so that you lock that down super easy, or jail like one side of their ruin that's hard for you to get to so their tanks can't move and shoot you when you're trying to move to stage 0 on turn 1.
But surely there's more value in using them for other things than that. That's because, like, do you really gain that much momentum on such a slow army like T-Suns?
Oh, I think it's huge. Man. No, I think on the slower armies, the momentum is even more important. Like, your Rhino, like, I found a lot of these these times where I play is like, your Rhino, like, moves 10, you disembark 3. If you just had it to move like another 4 to 5 inches, it means that all of a sudden your whole squad can see the ruin without even temporal surging, for example. And that's what it lets you like stage so much closer because you're stopping people from shooting at angles.
So my experience so far has been that Zangors are not an early game move block for me. They're my mid game move block. So there comes a point where you activate with a small number of Rubric Marines, and you want those Rubric Marines to not be engaged in a very positive position. I mean, arguably you could do this with 2 units of Zangors. So 1 unit of Zangors does a move block, and then you do a mid game move block with the other unit. But with just one unit, I personally prefer the sequence of play where you do the mid-game move block and buy yourself time at that
Yep.
stage, rather than a turn 1 where they still get to their position they were going for in turn 2 anyway.
Oh, no. So if they still get to their position where they get to on turn 2, like, that's not the situation where you use it, right? The point is they do not get to, like, almost move through their deployment zone, because you move 22 inches on average, right? So they should never get to their position that they ideally want to get to, right? If you use your Zangors correctly, I think, in that case. Like, I think,
I mean, I really accept that if you have a second stage move block there. Like, if you then have 20 Zangors that teleport forward and kind of keep your opponent pinned back, and then you attack them in their kind of DZ position, I think that's extremely strong. But I'm not sure T-Suns outside of the mutant detachment can do that so easily.
That's interesting. Because it's so funny, because I completely disagree. I think the whole point is you only do it for one turn. You don't do it for 2 turns. Because, like, one turn lets you shift all your units into a position that they're actually safe from, so that your opponent can't reprisal you on their turn 1. And that's the completely critical thing. All of a sudden, your bowgoats can just move normally, shoot onto their objective, and then contest it, right?
I'm just thinking, if you go first, they're not interacting with you anyway. You're tucked in outside your DZ anyway.
No, but they're gonna deploy aggressively so that, like, they can shoot your stage, because your army doesn't have, like, a lot of long range, right? So if you're playing against such, like, let's say Gladius Ultramarines, right? They're gonna activate Dev Doctrine turn 1 so that they can shoot your Rhino, because Rhinos can't really tuck in from your deployment zone all the way around into, like, the primary expansion objective, right? So they're going to deploy almost on the line with a lot of, I would personally. And so I'm going to try and clear your Rhinos out before they can get to, like, their absolute staging position.
Okay, you've sold it for me, Dave. I'm going to do that every game now. You sold it for me. I'm envisioning it.
Just try it at least once.
This is, you see, that's why you need Dave every now and then to come and save you. My Zangors in the back corner. That's where they were. Now they're on the front line.
On the front line. I've learned a lot of other people. Okay, so the bow goats, I think. So the bow goats, we've got an S tier. Yeah. The normal goats, I think, are. I think just top of B tier, honestly.
Yeah, they're your chaff. They're your solid chaff. 50-point chaff.
I think you made a good argument for them before, like holding your backfield, using them as like a OC6 tool piece, I think is really good. So I can see that as well. Zangor Shaman. Oh, this guy's A tier, bro.
You think so? You like a Zangor Shaman?
I didn't love him until I did the masterclass with Sacco, and he said, David, the reason you play Zangor Shaman is because sometimes you need to go to the middle, do an action, and you still want to cast a spell.
Yep.
And that's the cheapest option for him.
Exactly. And he's really great at 55 for that. And now he can move through walls. Beautiful.
Exactly. And I think he's definitely better than the 10 Zangors, because you're going to see him in every single list, I think, and multiple of them as well. The thing that I used to do, though, I used to join him with the bow goats. No, right? You don't want to do and then that. I realized that's not what you do. No, you just use them as a character, chuck a Doom Bolt or Temporal Surge something and do Area Denial or something like that, and then you keep your bows the same. Because I was like, man, +1 to hit, but no, then you use the boats with or only you reroll target.
Because with reroll all hits, actually the maths is not that great for getting +1 to hit, because you are switching into lethal hits with more failed hits. So
exactly, yeah. The Mutate detachment has the enhancement where this guy becomes 5 wounds and a 4-up feel no pain. So he literally doubles his wounds. So it's kind of cool there as well. Okay, what about the Chaos Spawn?
I'm quite low on the Chaos Spawn. I was low on the Chaos Spawn in the index as well. Where are you, Dave, with this?
I think if you're paying 5, if you can get 5 more points, 10 Zangors are so much better, and 3 boats or 3 goats, whatever, disc guys, are cheaper and will contest your opponent's objective as well. And then if you play a Zangor Shaman, he can do your action in the middle regardless and still cast a spell. So they're kind of like in this trifecta of like not great against any particular thing, because you're playing very similar data sheets anyway that can do his role. So I think he's probably worse than Ahriman personally. And I think he's probably worse than the Terminator Sorcerer as well.
Yeah, good. Because actually it's a good data sheet. And actually 65 points is quite good. It's just that the alternative options are better here.
Yeah, if your opponent plays one, you're like, oh, they're going to try and like make it annoying to kill in the middle probably, right? And you're like, oh, I have to commit to kill it. So I originally started playing them, and then I kind of liked them less and less because, when I was theory crafting some builds and I saw some other builds in our team and stuff, I thought the Zangor Shaman, and it's funny how this comes back to the Zangor Shaman, but I was like, oh, Zangor Shaman and boats and stuff like that. I was like, okay, so I joined the Zangor Shaman, the boats, and then like once you realize like that's not what you're supposed to do, then the Chaos Spawn become a lot worse, unironically. And when you look at a list, that's not really exactly obvious, right? That, by the way, you don't join this unit. And in Thousand Suns, like, the chaff is so important because you got so much little amounts of it that, your turn 1 chaff, you need to have something for that. You need to have something for a turn 2 area denial, for example, right? So, yeah, just like not having your unit count be super narrow is really important. And yeah, like I said, that's why you have a Zangor Shaman.
Yeah.
And that's why Chaos Spawner down. A little bit an odd one. Defiler.
You used a Defiler, didn't you, Dave?
Bro, I used a Defiler. Sacco used a Defiler. I think there's some Defiler love out there.
Any good?
I think in the vehicle detachment, yes, we're playing 2 Defilers. And that's on WTC as well. So, they got a 6-up Feel No Pain. The vehicle detachment has a 4-back shoot and charge strat. So, if you put your Defiler in a bit of an annoying spot, it can then, it's melee's like the best part about it, really.
Nice.
And then its las cannon hits, and then is twin linked, so you get a hit reroll, hit wound and damage roll. So it's pretty good, and it does have the smoke keyword. It also has the walker keyword. So unless I'm wrong, you can heroically intervene with it. Which, I mean, heroically intervening with a Defiler, A, is pretty fucking badass. But B, when you can fall back, shoot, and charge, is actually quite a good counterpiece because you play it with the extra attacks and it gets like 8 quality attacks. Yeah. So actually, Defiler is pretty good. Nice. But it's only in the vehicle detachment, sadly, I think.
Sure. Okay, B tier Defiler.
Mr. Maulerfiend.
Maulerfiend, cheap, runs at things. Yeah, I thought the Defiler was going to go there, but you've put the Defiler in the B tier. Got it.
I mean, that's in the this. I'm going to preface this. This is in the vehicle detachment, and I'm just going to put in vehicle detachment under this because I don't want someone copying and pasting this image and being like, "Mate, this guy thinks Defilers are good."
Defiler's better than Terminators.
Yeah. Hellbrute.
Have we got a Hellbrute under there? Hellbrute. You
bad,
used a Hellbrute, didn't you? And you did not like the Hellbrute.
That was terrible. I would much rather have had any unit, literally any unit on this tier list than a Hellbrute. Even if it was a Chaos Spawn, I think, at 50 less points. Yep. The Hellbrute was terrible. It moved 6. It's miserable. Yeah. Don't play Hellbrute.
I mean, I think the Land Raider has a massive problem that it should just be a Rhino plus another vehicle. It's really hard to move it around. Yeah, it just doesn't have a role in this army, unfortunately. Yeah, is it worse than the Hellbrute? I think it's worse than the Hellbrute.
I think it's worse than Hellbrute. Yeah.
Yeah.
Vindicator.
Vindicator, however, is very interesting because how many points is Vindicator? 180 or something?
180. I think it's 180, 185. The Vindicator is 185. The problem is that the other vehicle detachment chassis are quite efficient, so doesn't end up quite making the cut. So in Sacco's list and my list, we both cut the Vindicators. Even though you have access to AOC in the vehicle detachment, you've still got lots of other good strats to use, and 2 Vindicators, you could have close to 3 Predators, right? So 2 up save, great, but I mean, a whole nother hull is amazing, right? So I don't think the Vindicator is that good. I definitely think it's better than a Mauler Fiend, and I think it goes somewhere roughly here, potentially.
I think it's better than the Demon Princes.
Okay, sure. I can see that. Did you have a list with a Vindicator in it? That's why.
No, I didn't, because it just kept getting swapped for Predator Annihilators or Forge Fiend. But technically, the datasheet is good.
Let me ask you a question. Let's break these 2 buddies up. What about a Vindicator? What about a Winged Demon Prince here and the Vindicator in between them?
Yeah, I like it. Nice.
All right, the last and most controversial one. Should the Rhino be in A tier or S tier?
I don't think it's S tier. I don't think the +1 to hit and wound actually comes up. I think I would actually have preferred if it was regain a wound. That's a hot take. That's a hot take.
I'm not quite sure I agree with that one, dude.
That is my hot take because it just doesn't come up in the game, the +1 to hit and wound. But theoretically, it's there.
Okay. Like Brian in my head right now is saying I use that every single game. He at least uses it twice. Okay. The question for me is it at the top of A? I would rather have the Rhino be 80 points and not have the firing dig rule, personally.
Oh my God.
Not have the +1 to hit and wound.
Yes.
But man, it's pretty good with the sorcerer, dude.
It's pretty good with the sorcerer. Yeah, the
Bro,
sorcerer
you were
goes from
hyping up the
3s to
sorcerer
2s.
so much, bro. Man,
Yeah,
like,
I know. I even talked about this particular combo.
Yeah.
The extra movement is absolutely critical. The Rhino, in my opinion, is quite critical to the army, but I don't think it's like the T Sun's Rhino is anything special. Like, to me, it still feels like a Rhino. The only one that's really special is the Emperor's Children one, in my opinion.
yeah, sure, yeah. Question: if you don't have the Rhino datasheet in the Thousand Suns Codex, are you really playing Rubric Marines and characters?
So, interestingly, I've seen a few lists go around from some very good players with 0 Rhinos.
That is a mistake.
That is mad, but people are going to know exactly who this is. So I think it's very interesting that it could still function without it. It's going to depend on your terrain, but I think for me, I'm having 2 Rhinos in every single one of my lists.
I'm doing the executive decision right here. Top of A.
I don't think it's better than the Rubrics, man. I don't think it's better than that combo. Those first 3 is still
okay.
It's still
you know
stronger.
What? Okay, for the sake of keeping it as Thousand Sunny as possible,
Yeah,
I think I can see where you're coming from here.
yeah. It's those 4 together basically.
Yeah.
They're the combo piece.
To be fair, basically 1, 2, the top 2, top 6, 7 units, 8 units is basically 1,500 points of your list if you build it. You know what I mean? Like, that is your list. And then do you play Magnus? Maybe yes or no. And then you play some other stuff there, right?
Yeah.
Like,
you can build a list with the top 6 units.
Yeah. You know what I found really interesting is that it's probably like the first time I've seen it happen is like you could take a Rubricae Phalanx list and a Coven detachment list, and you could almost just interchange the detachments, and they would both function really well in both, which goes to show you how much overlap in list building there is for those 2 particular detachments, I think, because they obviously completely still build around the core of characters, rhinos, and rubrics, and bowgoats, and that's just the most dominant preemptive strategy that's kind of arisen, right?
I'm really happy with this, Dave. The only thing I'd say is if we could change the Predator Annihilator to Pred A and Pred D, that might be clearer for people.
Yep.
This one's Pred D, yeah.
Yep.
Nice.
That is not liking me. Oh, it's because I grouped it together. Alrighty, ungroup.
Nice, then people can take their screenshots of this and then complain about us.
How strong do you think Thousand Suns are
Yeah,
going to be?
we've got to do an overall ranking, haven't we?
Yeah. I've got an advantage because I've recently done this commentary. But
okay, so I'm going to say the Thousand Suns are a definite A tier army. Now, my question is, are they going to sit at the top of A tier? Are they going to sit in the middle of A tier? I don't think they sit at the bottom of it. And I personally think they sit right in the mix in the middle of A tier here. Okay. Depending on your terrain format, I think they're going to be really good in WTC teams here going forward. But in GW and UKTC, so the kind of primary singles formats that we tend to see, I think T-Suns are really sitting just in A tier. They're fighting their battles there. Okay. What do you think, Dave?
I completely... I think that they will definitely win some very large events. And I think the GW format is probably one of the worst ones for them because it's very naturally open and shooting. UKTC, I think they play quite well. Like very well. I think they're a top 5 army for UKTC for sure. And I think if you want to do... So I completely agree with the rest of your takes as well. I think if Thousand Suns were a 10 out of 10 army at WTC last year, I think they're like an 8.3 out of 10 army now. It's just kind of translating from year to year. And I think that here's the hot take for me. If you want to do better with your Thousand Suns, especially on your first outing, I would play Magnus. Because I think Magnus is going to help you in a lot of these matchups where the play patterns might not be super clear. And I think he's still going to be hard for people to work around to play and beat. And so I think Magnus on some of these first outings is going to be really good. And I think teams at WTC will also play Magnus as well. But I think Thousand Suns are very strong. I think there's probably, if you think about it, a couple of their problematic matchups I could see getting nerfed coming up here as well.
That's it.
Emperor's Children Yanari, if that's good or bad, right? Who knows? To be
Yanari's
honest.
good into T-Suns.
Right, in
Interestingly.
his current format, right? So that could get nerfed. Death Guard has been very good, so that could also get nerfed. Guard, I don't know how that matchup looks, but I think Guard would probably have like very even play into them.
Mhm.
So I think some of their armies could be getting nerfed that they're walking into right now, and that could be very good for them as well.
Mhm.
So looking ahead, I think they're going to be in a very strong position.
Yeah, I think so. I think they're set up really nicely with the timing of when their codex is coming out. I think if their
Yep.
codex came out at the time when Emperor's Children came out, I think they might be in trouble. Like
Yes.
I think they were very likely to get over nerfed
Yeah.
based on some of the discussion and maybe the early statistics, because I think this is an army that will hit the ground running when it first
Okay.
comes out.
Yep.
A lot of top players love T-Suns. There's a bit of gravitation towards that. So I'm expecting high win rate, high event wins, especially in the first couple of weeks
Yep.
before it starts to stabilize once people get used to the rules here.
Nice.
But if the data sheet hits and it loses some of its counters, it's going to be interesting. I think they could come out really, really towards the top of the meta here.
Awesome. Cool. Well, what I have to say is they're a lot funner to play against now, actually. Now that the Cabal changes been changed a lot, I think it's made for a more enjoyable play experience overall. So I think they're in a really good position here. Nice.
Yes.
Awesome. Sweet, guys. Well, that's been it. If you've made it through an hour and 25 minutes, this is one of the longer tier lists we've done. This was a really good one, actually. Do be sure to hit the like, comment, subscribe. We have a membership section where we're going to be doing more stuff on Thousand Suns, and then we have the T-Suns Masterclass on 40kfireside.com there as well. Awesome, guys. That's been us for today. Thank you very much for joining, and we hope you have a good one.
Yep. See you next time by the fireside. Bye. Thank you for listening to the 40K Fireside. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, drop us a comment, check out the YouTube members area, and we look forward to seeing you again next time by the fireside.